We have 8 members, so we have a quorum. We call to order this meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes of meeting. Confirmed. Thank you. Item 2, information papers issued since the last regular meetings. Would members please note that? Third item, items for discussion at the next meeting. At the next meeting scheduled for the 15th of December at 4:30 p.m., the government has proposed to discuss the following 2 items. Annual tariff reviews with the 2 power companies and food trucks scheme. So these 2 items will be quite long, so the government has proposed only 2 items for discussion. I hope members would agree. And the other business is that in relation to the Hong Kong International Airport's ATMS, Air Traffic Management System, the item may have to be postponed to March, and I thank Dr. Kenneth Leung for his support. So item 4 of the agenda, public consultation on the future development of the electricity market. Please invite the administration in.
Tony 提問題，或者趁啲官。
Well, perhaps as the government officials coming in, please raise your hand if you have comments to make, so that the secretariat would note down your names.
五位先啦。
We have 4 or 5 members for the time being. Thank you. Secretary and other representatives, welcome. Would you please walk us through the views received in the public consultation on the future development of the electricity market conducted in March? Good morning. In relation to the outcome of the public consultation and the proposal to extend the 2 supernumerary posts, I'd like to report the following to members. The existing scheme of control agreements would expire in 2018. At the end of March, we launched a 3-month public consultation on the future development of the electricity market, and we received around 16,000 submissions during the consultation period. We also held over 25 meetings with stakeholder groups, and we had forums to take views from different stakeholders. The key findings are set out in the paper. I'd like to make a number of salient points. Now, on regulatory arrangements, almost all respondents considered that the current contractual agreement by SCAs had generally worked well and allowed us to achieve the energy policy objectives. However, there are also views that improvements should be made in respect of a number of areas, such as the level of permitted rate of return (ROR), mechanism to promote energy saving, promotion of distributed RE, monitoring of power companies' investments in carbon reduction, etc. In terms of introducing competition, many are of the view that at present electricity supply in Hong Kong is reliable and safe at affordable price, and that competition should not be introduced. And some are of the view that the reliability and affordability were the key objectives for introducing competition. And in short, political parties, green groups were more supportive of the introduction of competition, whilst the business sector was less positive about the arrangement. As for the future contractual agreement, there are various views. Some believe that the permitted rate of return should be maintained to allow sufficient incentive to the power companies to make investments. Some stakeholders, however, suggest that the ROR should be lowered in view of low interest rate environment and low business risk of the power companies' investment. And on demand side management, respondents believed that better terms should be included to set energy-saving targets for power companies. And for permitted rate of return, some suggest that it should be pegged to the performance in energy saving and reducing energy consumption. And information should be made more transparent. And also, over half of the respondents, in terms of the promotion of RE, believed that despite its high tariff implications, further development of renewable energy RE should be supported. On the other hand, some believed that there was limited potential to develop RE in Hong Kong, and therefore did not support further development of RE. For those who were prepared to pay more to use RE and had indicated a specific amount, most indicated that they were prepared to pay up to 5% more or 5 to 10% more. And as for the specific measures to promote RE, a substantial number of submissions considered that clear terms on grid access should be set out in the future contractual agreement to encourage development of RE by small-scale distributed generators. Some respondents suggest that feed-in tariff, FIT, or net metering should be used. And also on the fuel cost arrangement and tariff approval mechanism, some believed that the existing arrangement appropriate and should be maintained. Some believed that the fuel cost should also be monitored by the government. In short, we have received the views and we're consolidating the views, and we will work out specific proposals and commence negotiation with the power companies to improve the mechanism. The existing SCAs will expire in 2018, and we propose to work on the following areas. For example, to lower the permitted rate of return and to enhance promotion of RE, and improving the incentive and penalty scheme to enhance performance and higher information transparency, and to pave way for introducing competition. Our objective is to achieve the 4 objectives of the energy policy, that is safe, reliability, affordability, and environmentally friendly. Taking into account the various views received, we believe that the permitted rate of return in terms of the ROR is necessary to lower it. And during the consultation in mid-March, the government engaged a consultant to conduct the study, and based on the global environment, the consultant is of the view that the ROR could be lowered to about 6 to 8%. And based on the latest market situation, we're going to revise the latest proposed ROR for reference. In preparing the new set of SCAs, the ROR should be one of the major considerations, and we're going to make improvement as part of the comprehensive consideration of the matter. Different proposal will bring about different changes in the operations of power companies, and the negotiation process will be lengthy. A dedicated team is required to follow up on the negotiation aspect. And as a result, we propose to extend the following the 2 supernumerary posts, including 1 AOSGCD2 and 1 Assistant Principal Government Counsel of the Department of Justice to support our work.
Members, some of you have just entered. When the secretary came into the room, he suggested that item 1 and 2 be discussed together because they are related topics. Now we have the following members who would like to ask questions: Xiao Wei-Chen, Yu Si-wing, Ip Chim-ming, Chen Kam-lam, Yang Kai-chang, Lo Wai-kwok, Lam Kin-fong. Anyone else? If not, I'll allow these members to ask questions. These 2 items discussion should end at 11, so I would give members more time. We can discuss about these 2 items together. So each member will be given 6 minutes, including the government's answers. Mr. Chai Wei-chin, thank you. Well, for the development of electricity market and its future, they are very important for Hong Kong. I have also consulted my industry. They have given me some proposals. As to whether competitors should be introduced, we adopt an open attitude. The most important thing is the reliability of electricity supply. Well, in Hong Kong, the performance of the power companies has been satisfactory. So we should really look at the benefits of introducing competition. So at the present moment, I think we should just optimize the existing system. The Secretary also talked about the permitted ROR. Well, Chairman, you are very clear about that. That is related to the duration. If the duration cannot be set, then we cannot set a so-called reasonable ROR. So I hope that the government can give us its proposal. If the duration is too short, then because these companies are doing business, they don't want to lose money, so the ROR will be high. So we have to consider this. And also I would like to ask the government to think about this. Now we are very concerned about an issue, that is environmental protection. Now for the power companies, for the permitted ROR, when these are decided on, the power company should be required to implement green measures. And this should serve as an incentive. Also, this incentive should be used in the private sector so as to encourage companies to promote energy efficiency. Can all these be considered? And second, about the extension of the 2 supernumerary posts. My view is that if there is work to do, of course, we need manpower. However, would they be just doing one single job? Because we want to promote other green measures, such as green buildings. And we need manpower everywhere. But I am afraid that these 2 posts would be too focused on this issue, because there will be a dedicated team, and when we create posts now, we have to look at a lot of things. Last week at the Finance Committee, we also discussed about this. So I hope that the Secretary can also tell us more about the manpower arrangement. Secretary? Thank you. I would provide information in various aspects. With regard to duration, at present is 10 years plus 5 years. That is basically there are 5 years, and for the other 5 years is for extension, and is to be decided by the government after looking at that the current situation. So now we are proposing to adopt the same arrangements, and we have consulted the stakeholders. They agreed to this. So this is the basis for our further negotiation with the 2 power companies. As for energy conservation, many people hope that more can be done in this regard, and some suggest that there should be an incentive scheme. If the power companies do more about energy saving and conservation, and if there are results, then incentives should be given. So this is in the same direction as the member suggested. We will consider doing that. As for the 2 supernumerary posts, these 2 posts already exist. They have been helping us to review the electricity market. So when policies are involved, for example, RE and energy conservation, these officers will give us their advices. They would also communicate with other government departments. No questions? Okay, Mr. Yu. I have read the relevant information. This time around, we have received over 15,000 submissions, so that is a lot. It proves that the public is very concerned about this. As for the result or the findings of the public consultation, I think is too simple. Now you are saying that 5,000 of them are in templates, and some groups would have this templates on their websites. We don't have a breakdown of all these figures. Now, what are people most concerned about? And there are some very good views, for example, about energy saving and about RE. So I hope that the government can give us a breakdown. As for the templates, well, it doesn't mean that there are more submissions. Using templates, it would mean that more people support that. So we need to know people's views. Some people may put forward very unique views, and those views might be very professional. So I think we should look at the actual opinions, and maybe members are interested in talking to the green groups that put forward such views. So if you can give us this kind of information, it will help us in looking at this matter. So this is my first point. As for the second point, it's about Hong Kong's electricity supply. I think it's very advanced, it's reliable, stable, efficient. We are one of the most advanced places in the world in terms of electricity supply. So can we move forward even more? We shouldn't be complacent. Now the whole world promotes RE and environmental protection. So let us not look at just 1 or 2% of ROE. We can still give them 9.99%, but we need to strike a balance. That is on a present basis. How can we promote the use of RE and power conservation so that we can be more advanced? Now, Hong Kong is a small place, so it's not too difficult to do all this. Has the government looked into these issues? Well, don't just think about reducing the ROR to 6% or 8%. You can give them 1 or 2 more percents, but you can ask them to do more work. Otherwise, they may work in accordance to their cost. And also, tariff increase. Now, if the old SCA is continued, I think you should look at the future arrangements, and then we can also consider adding 2 posts. Thank you, Mr. Yu. We have collected views from the public, and they share the views of Mr. Yu. Now we have a safe and stable foundation. So on this we can do more so that we can use more RE, etc. So for the permitted ROR, there are standards, and we can look at such objective standards, but we will have to look at the whole picture. And we also want to make improvements. So for the extension of the 2 posts, it is also to serve this purpose. So we are working in the same direction with Mr. Yu. With regard to information, in our paper, we have provided you with the information concerning the major areas. And Mr. Yu, if you are concerned about a particular area, you want to know more about that, we will be willing to contact you after the meeting and give you more information in that regard. But some respondents have told us that they want their views to be kept confidential. So we may not be able to give you all the information you want. Now there are over 10,000 submissions. How many of them want to be kept confidential? I don't think there are many. So I want a breakdown. How many of them are templates? How many of them are more objective, more subjective? And if some of them want to be kept confidential, you can also tell me that. We do not need the names, but I want the information. I want to break down of the information, and I want to know what the public is most concerned about. We can use that as a reference. But if you write a paper like this, I don't think I can make reference to it. This is not for myself. This is for all members. Yes, we need the justifications. Now, because there are over 10,000 submissions, there must be very different views. Yes, you have given us a rough picture. You say that some people want to remain anonymous. Well, they can remain anonymous. We just want to know the justifications for reference. And we need a more detailed analysis. Yes, we can go back and look at it and see if more detailed information can be provided to members. I'm more concerned about RE. As for energy conservation, we have talked about that for on many occasions. So can you give me more information on RE? Yes, it's not included in this paper. There are not many details. As for RE, I think it's divided into two major types. Well, let's talk about this on another occasion because we are talking about the future development of the electricity market this time around. Please give us a simple answer. So for RE, many respondents agreed that it should be provided in a distributed pattern. We will do more promotion and we will talk to the two power companies and see how the grid access arrangements can be made better. That will be a direction that we will be pursuing. Also, in paragraph 11 of the paper, you say that the business sector was in general less positive about the introduction of competition. Many private corporations consider that the performance of the power companies have been satisfactory and do not see the need to introduce competition to bring in choices. I think the business sector is concerned about the reliability of power supply. It's not that they do not want to introduce competition. The business sector is concerned about the tariff level as well. Now it is acceptable, but is there room for downward adjustments? Of course, the government has given us information, and you say that the ROR may be lower to 6 or 8%. Other than this, have you thought about other options? I would like to listen to the government's view.
A second point in the background brief. Opening the grid is mentioned. Well, it is said that energy consumption can be reduced as a result of opening up the local power grids, and yet, according to your reply, the power grids have been opened up and it is fully effective. Well, we manage tunnels, and we understand that there are two power grids which have been connected, but it's connected only on a small scale basis. I want to know if the administration plans to look into this. Say, for example, if the two power companies' grids are connected, let's say if there is reserve capacity of 20 or 30%, then can the capacity be lowered to 15% so that they can complement each other? Because when we calculate the net assets, well, these are capital, and public has a price to pay for that. But I want to know if the reserve capacity can be saved. I want to know whether in the long run whether this will be beneficial to the public or not. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Yik, for your question. Well, I will answer the first question and ask my colleague to supplement the second question. I think this is a balanced view presented by the honourable member. The majority of respondents believed that reliability is of utmost importance, but reasonable pricing is also important. It is related to the future SEAs. Reduction in the permitted ROR will generally cause a reduction in the tariff. However, there are variables. For example, if REs are promoted, then to some users the tariff may be increased. So it's a balancing exercise. And also, according to the submissions, energy saving is also important. Energy consumption reduction in some buildings may also help save tariff. And there are also other matters, for example, the approval mechanism, which may also strike a better balance in terms of the tariff. Now, on the interconnection of power grids, we looked into that before. We're talking about a substantial amount of investment, equivalent to that for several additional power generating units. So when the power grids are connected, then there will be an immediate surge in power tariff. And yet the benefits are not very obvious, because the energy consumption is expected to drop by 20 to 30%. It is a reasonable rate. So on the one hand, we need to increase investment upfront. On the other hand, it doesn't immediately help reduce tariff. So it may not be an appropriate juncture to introduce interconnection of power grids. But in the long term, maybe we can look into the proposal of connecting the power grid with the mainland grids. And from that perspective, and by doing so, we will need to connect the two power grids in Hong Kong as well. That is why after 2018, we're going to conduct a more detailed study with the mainland authorities to see whether we can introduce comparatives from the mainland. Well, I hope that the government can conduct a study and give us exact figures instead of just talking about substantial amounts of investment, because investments would be inevitable. Let's say if the rate is dropped from 20 to 15%, then for per unit reading, I want to know what benefits the public will have, because your answer seems quite abstract. You don't seem to be answering my question. Now, according to our calculation, we're talking about tens of billions of dollars of investment. Yes, investments is one thing, but I want to know the long-term benefits, whether the tariff will be lowered and by how much. Perhaps we can provide this information after the meeting. Yes, please do so if you can. Mr. Chen Kam-lam. Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think the two members just now asked some very specific questions. After conducting the consultation exercise, the government should really consider the public's views. I think there is generally a consensus on the fact that there is generally a natural monopoly of the electricity market. So in terms of the fuel mix, pricing, tariff, there is a question on whether the power companies have tried their best in securing the source of fuel and whether the fuel mix is the most optimum one. The SCAs will expire in 2018, and we're talking about the new SCAs. What should be included? I think the government may heed the public's views and reduce the permitted ROR to about 6 to 8%. As for other views received in the consultation, when will the government come up with a more confirmed position? Will there be another round of public consultation? I think it is important as well because the electricity market has substantial implications on people's livelihood. There should be more participation from the public. For the power companies, it seems that consumers don't really have a choice. So I think the government's position should be that the government should sit down with the two power companies and let them know that they have an important social responsibility. They have a social corporate responsibility, and they should shoulder the responsibility of going green and protecting the electricity market. As for the previous answer to Mr. Yik's question on the pros and cons of interconnecting power grids, the answer that you give should be clear enough, and there should be figures supporting the argument so that we see the full picture of the market. Don't tell us that the study won't be conducted until 2018, because when you negotiate with the two power companies, the figures would be a very important factor. If you don't have a stance, then the power companies would think that the government won't be able to connect the grids. So there is nothing the government can do, let alone introducing the mainland element. So I think the government should conduct a more detailed study. Every 5 or 10 years, we discuss the same issues again. So if there is a longer-term arrangement acceptable by all, then we won't need to criticize the government or urge the government to act every time. I hope the government would come up with a clearer position as soon as possible, so as to let the market and the public know what the position is, so that the public may have a higher degree of participation. Yes, Secretary. Well, I'll speak first and I'll ask my colleague to supplement. For the consultation exercise which just ended, in fact, there was a high degree of public participation. We received 16,000 submissions. We believe that the community actively took part in the consultation, and the community gave us a lot of suggestions for follow-up. So for the high degree of participation and their views expressed, I think it's very clear. We're going to negotiate with the power companies on the major views of the major outcomes of the consultation exercise. Reliability and safety. These are important elements, followed by affordability, and they are in line with the objectives of the energy policy in Hong Kong. And this forms the basis of negotiation with the two power companies. Of course, we need to observe the timetable very strictly as well, because the SCAs will expire in 2018. The consultation, the negotiation will be difficult and lengthy, and that is why we will duly follow up on the negotiation with the two power companies. My colleague can supplement on the point of interconnecting power grids. In fact, last time when we conducted a consultation on the fuel mix, we already had this discussion. From the figures, we understand that interconnecting power grids would not allow for further reduction in the reserve capacity of power companies. And according to data, enhancing the power grids or the interconnection of power grids, basically, it's not really cost effective at this stage. I'll see if my colleagues want to supplement. Secretary has already given the main reply, and according to data, interconnection of power grids may not be beneficial to consumers in the short run, but perhaps after the meeting we can give you more data for reference. I think the other major concern of members is this. Of course, you need to negotiate with the two power companies. It's in 2018. Well, now we're approaching 2016, so we don't have much time left, and you're still dragging your feet talking about another round of consultation. And then in 2017 there'll be a new term of electrical, and soon there'll be it will be 2018. So please complete the collation of views as soon as possible and give us a report. Otherwise, we have this feeling that the government is dragging on its feet again, such that when it's only several months before the deadline, the SCAs will be hastily signed. Well, it will only be reviewed once every 10 years. And what actually will change? Maybe just to reduce the ROR from 9.9 to 6 to 8. I don't think it is desirable. Dr. Kenneth Leung. I'd like to refer to CB bracket 4217/1516 bracket 04. I have a number of questions on this, very simple ones. On the by 2020, natural gas will account for 50% of the total energy mix. Well, if natural gas is used, then inevitably the tariff will increase because of the use of cleaner energy. And the power companies have told me that they would like to have some arbitrage, but at present Hong Kong doesn't have the storage facilities for natural gas. In Singapore, however, several years ago they already built the facility for storing natural gas. I want to ask the government if it has any initiatives to encourage power companies to provide natural gas storage. Now, second question. You say you encourage promotion of RE, but in your brief you also mentioned that there'll be an incentive if a further RE is used. Well, have you considered adopting a certain percentage of generating electricity with RE? I understand that previously you set a target of 3% RE. Is it too low? And waste to energy has also been included as RE. I want to know whether this 3% is too low, and there is no mandatory requirement that the two power companies use the 3% in their SCAs. And in 12C, you mentioned that energy saving should be promoted. Now, smart metering is one way to help consumers save energy. However, the CLP consider that smart metering can be promoted, but not Hong Kong Electric. So those living on the island side would not benefit. So will the government make it a mandatory requirement that smart metering be adopted for every household?
I'll answer the third question first. As for our consultation, it's not just about energy saving meter. The two power companies have different inclinations. They have different directions. However, what we are fighting for is a goal. The goal is that the SCAs for the two power companies will be more consistent, because in the past there have been a number of differences. However, we've been talking to them, and now they are going more or less in the same direction. For example, if the people support smart metering, when we negotiate with the power companies, we are sure that something can be done in this regard. There will be a floating platform for natural gas. One of the power companies is doing a research on this. So we will wait for the findings of the study and try to find out whether it's feasible, because it involves the location of it, and maritime issues may be involved. So if it is feasible, a proposal will be given to us. Well, a lot of departments are involved. It's not just about your bureau. So when it comes to planning, you can't just sit here and wait for the power companies. You have to coordinate. You have to give them your views. If you just wait for them, then we may have to wait for a number of years. I don't think you should just sit there and wait. You should talk to other departments and coordinate. As for this study, it involves other government departments. They are engaged in the process and they have been giving their views. So after the study, if we find that it is feasible, then we will look at it in greater details. And if they make an application, we will consider it actively. As for RE, in the future years, we will have a number of waste-to-energy facilities. That is also a form of RE, and after 2020, we think it will account for 1% of the total electricity supply. But for other large-scale RE facilities, such as Windfield, we have to look at Hong Kong's environment. Well, I want to interrupt. I don't want to talk about Windfield or well, how about solar energy? So in other countries, it accounts for big portions. So how come in Hong Kong we do not promote solar energy further? Well, for solar energy, if we want a large site, it involves a lot of things. And it's also very expensive. So it may not be that cost effective. We are now looking at distributed RE. Maybe on some houses we can add solar panels. So in the new SEAs, we hope that there are provisions which can help development in this area. Next, Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. Thank you, Chairman. After several years of consultation, the government now has a clear direction about fuel mix. And the target for 2020 is that for gas-fired generation, it will account for 50%, nuclear 25%. If these goals are to be achieved, the power companies would have to increase the number of gas-fired generation units, and we are just talking about 5 years. So has the secretary been talking to the power companies? Have they come up with concrete plans? Well, because this will help improve the air quality of Hong Kong, and emission can be reduced. If the government hasn't started talking to the power companies yet, we may not achieve that. As for the nuclear energy, it will be 25%. So it's mainly about power imported from Daya Bay, and it will be increased from 70% of their capacity to 80%. So in terms of facilities, would they have to be enhanced and increased? We also have a very short time for doing this. Have you started talking to the relevant parties? And if the power companies are to increase the number of generation units or even gas-fired units, of course, that would also involve returns. So I think all this is related. Let me talk about generation units first. For the two power companies, there is a need for them to increase the number of units in order to achieve the goals. That is 50% of natural gas. Well, in 2013, the government has given the power companies an approval in principle, and lately an official approval has been given so that a new unit can be bought, and I believe that it can be commissioned by 2020. That is for Hong Kong E. As for CLP, they are now doing EIA for a new generation unit. So after they've collected all the data, they will make an official application to us for buying the unit. We hope that this can be done next year. And if possible, it can be commissioned next year. As for increasing the import of nuclear energy from Daya Bay, CLP needs to talk to Daya Bay because they have to buy more electricity from them. I understand that CLP will do that in 1 or 2 years' time, and now they have started negotiation, and it is hoped that things can start to kick off in 2018. Now, generation units will be increased. That is very important. And also another thing important is this source of gas. And the government's policy is to rely on the gas that's transported from Western China. So in the long run, what is the government's strategy in terms of gas supply? Will you only rely on the gas from Western China, or will you encourage the two power companies to look at other sources? Of course, that will involve what Mr. Leung Kai-chang said just now. That is the problems of storage and transportation. But this is a very important long-term plan for Hong Kong. So can you answer this question? Other than transporting gas from Western China, the power companies are also talking to other companies. For example, in South China Sea, there are also new gas sources. Of course, we will have to acquire more natural gas. As for floating platform, that is one of the options we are considering. We hope that the supply of natural gas can be increased. Next, Mr. Lee Chia-yan. I am very disappointed in the government. We started talking about this since Mr. Ip Shih-kwan, and then it's Ms. Sarah Liu, and then now it's Mr. Wong Kam Sing. That it has been 10 years, and now we are back to square one. The result is we will not be doing anything. We will not be making any change. Ip Shih-kwan said that the two power grids should be connected, and now you are not even doing that. You are not doing anything. You just come up with new terms, renewable energy. But when I look at it, it is not feasible because it will again be another monopoly. Well, some people want to have access to the power grids. Well, I don't know what the future technology will be like. You told us just now solar energy is very expensive. Now, technology would advance. If you sign a 10-year SCA and there are new technologies, what would happen? Because the grid is not open, nobody can be connected to the power grid. Any new inventions, new technologies are in vain. You always talk about innovation and technology. So how about the latest innovative technology in the electricity market? Even if there are new technologies, nothing can be done because the power grid is not open. And now you give us this paper with this direction. You are saying that there will be no competition in the market, and the two power companies would continue to monopolize the markets. The public would have to pay high tariff because you keep the permitted ROR at 9.99%. We have always objected to such a high ROR. We hope that in the future, after the 10-year SCA, things can change and the public can enjoy cheaper electricity. But now you do the same thing. You want to assure that they make a lot of money and there will be no new competition. Well, of course, the government can use the consultation results as an excuse. And I would like to commend the PR departments of the two power companies. I'm sure they have done a lot of things. But now the government is hiding behind the consultation. I think it's highly irresponsible, because you should help the people to stop monopoly. And you have come up with a competition ordinance to do that. However, now you are still trying to maintain these monopolies of the two companies. And Chairman, just now, yesterday, we had a district council election, and the government has always said that the communities should be consulted. However, for these new arrangements, have you consulted the public? I don't think you have done that. Now we have new district councillors. They should speak for their communities. So I would like to ask you, have you ever consulted district councils on this topic? If not, will you do that? Thank you, Mr. Lee. First of all, about RE, in particular solar energy. For this consultation, we actually have found a very positive result. That is, if there are distributed low carbon solar generators, we will facilitate their connections to the power grid. So the two power companies would have to do that. What I mean is that now if you have a building and that's solar energy generation, then there is a more convenient way to connect it to the power grid. Yes, but it's of a very small scale. For example, at Chifu Fayuan, now they encourage people to ride on certain bicycles so that their mobile phones can be charged. Yes, that can be done, but it's of a very small scale. No, that's not. It's not like that. For example, if there is a several-story building with a big roof equipped with photovoltaic panels, it can really generate electricity. It's not of too small a scale. When we look at some other Asian cities, they are already doing this. You are saying that the power grid is not open. That's not true.
Secondly, from the public's response in this exercise, my feeling is that it's very objective to achieve the energy saving target. The public's views is this: there should be a safe and reliable system at affordable price, and it should be environmentally friendly. So our response is actually in line with the four objectives. Of course, we won't favor power companies in the business sector, but if you look around the world, our tariffs is actually one of the lowest among the world. So I think the public's comments have been very fair and also in line with our objective. And the public's views are very clear. Of course, we also set out clearly that some political parties held stronger views. But in fact, for green groups and some mainstream groups, they actually support the direction of consultation. Chairman, can I ask for a second round? Yes, please do now. Well, I don't agree. If you ask members of the public whether they want the system to be safe, whether they want the price to be affordable. Of course, the answer will be yes. Now, you talked about the example of a large block of building generating solar energy. You say it's not a small-scale generation, but it cannot connect to the power grid of CLP or HKE to supply electricity to the whole district. So please answer me. What about the permitted rate of return? Will it be maintained at 9.99%, and will there be another consultation? Now, we talked about the low carbon distributed RE generators. That is, in different buildings where renewable energy can be generated. Our idea is that they should be able to be connected to the power grid. That is why in the consultation and the views received in the consultation process, they have been quite positive about the idea. And I think the public's views, again, are quite clear on this. Chairman mentioned the deadline, and it's true that we should deal with the negotiation with power companies before the expiry of the SCAs. And there are also new initiatives, promotion of REs, etc. These issues are complex, requiring a longer process to deal with. So I think the consultation has come up with a clear direction for the government to consider. So I don't agree with you. Have you answered me on the permitted rate of return? I think the public's views are again very clear. When we discuss with stakeholder groups, there is a clear direction that the rate can be lowered. So I think the government is really hypocritical. The district councils will not be consulted. Sorry, but in fact you have used up your time. I want to put on record my dissatisfaction. Well, there is still some time left, and I'd like to state my view. I seldom do as chairman. As a member of the business sector, I'm also a consumer. So for other stakeholders in the business sector, be it a major hotel chain with high consumption of electricity or SMEs, they're all users. So reasonable return. Well, we hold different views. From the two power companies' perspective, of course, it should be as high as possible. But from the user's perspective, it should be as low as possible. Well, Chairman, I agree that our tariffs are one of the lowest among the world, and yet we are also one of the smallest places around the world, and that is why we have a small power grid. As a member of the business sector, we have a lot to consider. More than a decade ago, when the first SCA was prepared, it was against a backdrop of a high interest environment, more than 10% interest for loans. And at that time, well, because of the inflation rate was more than 10%, interest rate was more than 10%, so nobody criticized the permitted rate of return of over 10%. But now, against the global low interest rate environment, and that the yield for a 30-year U.S. Treasury bond is 2 to 3%, and even for the exchange fund, the return was just a couple of percentage points. So for the two power companies, the highest permitted rate of return has been 9.99%. Every time the two power companies maximize their return, and these are the major criticisms from members and stakeholder groups. Well, nowadays, if you look at the two power companies, they have made heavy investments in the market. Why is it that the duration should be 10 plus 5 years? Why not 5 plus 5 years? Because honestly, they're monopolizing the market, and we have no way to tackle it because these two power companies generate power as well as owning the power grids. It's not pragmatic to introduce another power generating company. A lot of work will be involved in laying cables, for example. And you can't force the power companies to sell the power grids to the government. So I think the most pragmatic approach is to consider whether to lower the 9.99% to 6 to 8%, because 6 to 8% is still very profitable against this environment. But in 5 or 10 years' time, the interest rate can't quite possibly reach 6%. So I think that 6 to 8% is still on the high side. And then when 2018 approaches, in the end, we would come up with something like 7.9%. We would like to see 6.1%, not 7.9%. And that's the concern of the public. So in striking a balance, the government should consider what is meant by a reasonable rate of return. You have to consider different aspects such as the interest rate and the amount of investment. So I think it's a tough job for you, Secretary. Assuming that you are still the Secretary in 2018, you should try to address the concerns of different stakeholders in the community, including the general public and the business sector. Thank you for your comment, Chairman. This is a challenging task. Our objectives are that the power supply in Hong Kong should be safe, reliable, at affordable price, and should be environmental friendly. So the objective is to set the tariff at an affordable price. Well, Chairman, you're right in pointing out that Hong Kong is a densely populated place. The environment is quite complex. Well, Singapore is, in fact, shares some similarities with Hong Kong. And the electricity market, well, they are more open. The market is more open, and yet their tariffs are 30% higher than those in Hong Kong. So comparing to other jurisdictions, our tariffs are actually quite reasonable. And members of the public believe that we can, we should make some improvements to the system. It has been well established and effective, and we have been engaging experts to look into the global picture of power supply, be it power generation or power grids. Now, before we initiate negotiation with the two power companies, we will update the data on, say, global interest rate, and the rate of return for similar power generators or power grid owners around the world. What about the rate of return for other power generators in other jurisdictions? Against this present environment, I don't think it's as high as 6 to 8%. For Macau, for example, for some cities in Australia and the United States, it ranges from 6 to 10%. For the U.S., the power companies are generally listed, so the yield is as high as 6 to 10%. Do you mean that? we're talking about rate of return for power generation, for power transmission or distribution, 6 to 10%. So high, but for money lending in the United States is just 1%. What about the duration? Is it as long as that in Hong Kong? Is it 10 plus 5 or 5 plus 5 years? Well, can we have a review once every 5 years for the government to see whether it should be 6 to 8% or what? In other jurisdictions with an open electricity market, it's done by way of an agreement. Now, as for our practice of 10 years plus 5 years, we have taken into account that the investment period is quite long. But they have already made the investment. If it's new, I can understand 10 years duration, but they have already made investment. Many coal-firing generation units will meet the end of their service life in 10 years, and there will be new investments to replace these generating units. And from the perspective of environmental protection, the increased use of natural gas will incur additional investment. So there will be new investments in different areas. Lastly, I'd like to know about this. When are you going to announce the figure, whether it's 6.1% or 7.9%? Will it be in the beginning of 2016 or just 2017 or 2018? Now, to have quality service, of course, pricing is one consideration. There are other initiatives, the use of renewable energy and enhancement of the services. It's a balancing exercise against the rate of return, and this is the negotiation strategy. Well, so what is your timetable? Of course, the deadline is 2018. We should deal with this issue before 2018.
So we will have to look at the public's response, and then we will talk to the two power companies. Our negotiation will start next year, and our consultant will also update us on the international practice in terms of permitted ROR. So that's why we need the extension of the two supernumerary posts, because the coming 2 years will be very important. Members, we have discussed these two papers, and we need members' support so that the two supernumerary posts can be extended. So if members do not object, I take it that you endorse the proposal. Okay, thank you, Secretary. Members, the officials for the next item are already here. So shall we continue, or shall we take a 2-minute break? Let's take a break.